Hi, my name is Becca Solis, and today I will be talking about the book Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. An interesting fact about this book is that it inspired at least 3 assassinations, one of them being on John Lennon by a man named Mark Chapman. He had been inspired by something the book had said about John Lennon and him being a phony. When he was arrested, they found the book in his possession. Another one was an attempt on Ronald Reagan by a man named John Hinckley Jr., and the book had also been in his possession in his apartment, which they had found. And another one was by a man named Robert Brando, and he had killed a lady named Rebecca Schaefer, and he had carried the book to her apartment when he had attacked her and killed her. The book The Catcher in the Rye was published in 1951 by a man named J.D. Salinger. Here is a summary of the plot of The Catcher in the Rye. In the book, it starts off with our main character, Holden Caulfield, and he's being kicked out of yet another boarding school. This is his 4th boarding school that he's being kicked out of. This time he's being kicked out for his grades. He has failed 4 out of 5 of his classes. Anyways, in his dorm room, he's discovered that his roommate has taken his ex-girlfriend out on a date. When his roommate gets back, he refuses to talk about the date, and this makes Holden very upset. They proceed to get into a fight, and Holden loses. So he gets angry and he leaves. He goes to New York and checks himself into a hotel called the Edmund Hotel. After Holden checks into the hotel, he goes and visits the lobby, talks to some girls, then he goes to a jazz club, then he comes back. He gets a prostitute, decides he doesn't want her but pays her anyways, then gets beat up to pay her even more money. Then he goes on a date with a girl named Sally, and he tries to convince her to run away with him, but she refuses, and he calls her a bad name and she runs away crying. Later that night he got very drunk, and then he sneaks into his old apartment to visit his sister he's been trying to get into contact. Her name is Phoebe, and she's quite young. Phoebe is upset with Holden because he's being kicked out of yet another school, and she really doesn't like this, and yells at him and tells him he never likes anything, and this kind of makes him sad. After that, Holden leaves, and he doesn't want to go back to the hotel, so he goes to his English teacher's house, but his English teacher lets him sleep there, but he wakes up and his English teacher is stroking his forehead and staring at him, so he decides that's kind of creepy, and then he leaves. After that, he goes and spends the night in the train station, and he just sleeps on a bench for a couple of hours. After that, Holden goes to Phoebe's school to tell her that he wants to meet her at the museum. So he tells her that, and then he goes and meets her at the museum and tells her that he's running away and she wants to go with him, but he doesn't want her to. So he walks away, and he knows that she's following her. So he goes to the zoo, and at the zoo he buys Phoebe a ticket to go on a carousel. And on the carousel he watches her being happy, and he's happy, and he starts crying, and it's raining, and it's very emotional. But yeah, and then it ends with him talking about his future plans and that he's going to yet another boarding school, and he might apply himself this time, but he really doesn't know because you don't know until it happens. And he's also sick. Here we are, back in the 1950s. While I'm here, I might as well tell you about J.D. Salinger. The author was always wealthy growing up. He was upper middle class. He was born into a wealthy family because his parents had a business importing meats and cheeses, and is very successful. The story takes place, it starts off in Pennsylvania, but it was only there for not that long, and it goes to New York, and that is the main part of where the story takes place. And you can definitely tell that it's in New York because of the slang that is used in the locations that he talks about, such as Broadway and Central Park. And all the hotels and taxis, which you can only get in major cities like LA or New York or Las Vegas, not so much in like Laverne, for example. The setting and time period also influenced the way he felt, because he felt very isolated at the time, since it was post-World War II and everybody was coming home from war and kind of ignoring him. The major events that conspired in American culture at the time the book was written was World War II. J.D. Salinger was enlisted, he was drafted into war, and he became a sergeant. And he brought his typewriter out during the nighttime, and he would type chapters for Catcher in the Rye. The reader can also see this took place in the 1940s or 50s because of the slang he uses. He talks about phone booths, canasta, matinees, Broadway as just a normal thing you just go see every day, which is not really true for 2015. So it was written in post-World War II, 1940s, 1950s, late 1940s, early 1950s. And the reader can definitely see this through the phrases he uses and the things he talks about, such as phone booths, canasta, matinees, just things like that. You wouldn't really see much in 2015. And he also talks about how much things cost, and back then it'd be like $2 for like 2 burgers and 2 milkshakes or whatever when he has breakfast. So you can see the difference in money throughout, and you can see what time period it is through that. Something different about the setting during the time period it was written was to end World War II. There had been a bomb that dropped on Japan, and at first America really liked this, but then not so much, and then America leaned more towards the conservative side. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoy. Bye!
Take me out to the bar.